My name is Carl Chose. I'm the sales manager here at the Neil A. Chose Music Company, and I am coming to you from San Diego, California. And Keith Snell is in the other screen, and he's coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico. We're happy to see lots of people from all over the country. We did a workshop yesterday, and everybody was great in sharing their locations, so we're happy to include everybody from across the United States. This is one of our first nationwide workshops, and we hope you enjoy it.
Hello, Kelly from Ohio.
All right.
Oh, and Utah.
Utah.
Deanna from Utah.
All right.
That's
Looks
the
like
best
we have,
part of these.
Yeah,
Ooh,
Texas.
North Carolina, Oregon,
Yeah.
California, Nashville, Black Mountain, North Carolina, Springfield, Missouri, Alabama. We're just all over the place.
Yeah.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Wow, they're just flying through there.
That's
Fabulous.
so fun.
It's really fun. It's great.
Thanks everybody for joining today. I think we have a good group in the workshop or our room at this point in time. We just don't want anybody to miss out. So with that in mind, we'd like to welcome you again to this Keith Snell online workshop. Today Keith is going to share his ideas on how to teach beginning through late elementary school students. Beginning through late elementary students, not necessarily that grade level, with an emphasis on preparing them to play the classics. We encourage you to take or ask questions throughout the workshop in the Q&A in particular. Those are easier for us to get to, but we will be answering the bulk of those questions at the end of the workshop, so please be patient and we'll get to those at the end. Please feel free to use the chat too and communicate with us via that, but it is a little harder for us to find questions in there, especially towards the end of the workshop. We also want to take advantage of the 50% discount we're offering, special for this workshop, and we're going to have exact details about that once we wrap up in about 15 minutes from now. So please stay tuned for that, and we'll give you info on how to take advantage of that. All that said, thank you so much again for joining us, and please take it away, Keith.
Thank you so much. Carl just said when we wrap it up in 50 minutes, he's really having wishful thinking today because I tend to go long. But I'm going to do my best to get through everything in the right amount of time today. So thank you so much for joining us. Of course, I am looking forward to the time when we can be all in person again because I love that so much. But it's pretty cool that we are spread all over the country and we can do this. So I kind of think that's exciting too. All right, so I am going to go through 4 books with you today. And we're going to start with Beginning Piano Repertoire. So this book, I got the idea for this book when speaking with a colleague of mine who teaches beginning class piano at a junior college. And she was saying how she loves using my preparatory level piano repertoire series in the class piano, but that she still has to have a method book of some sort just to get everyone started. But she would love it if there was a beginning book that got people just ready exactly to go into the repertoire series. And that really got my mind going that there could be a beginning book for an older beginner, either a teenager or an adult beginner who specifically wanted to get prepared to play literature that you would find in the prep level repertoire series. So what this book is really, it's a beginning book for an older beginner, a teenager, or an adult beginner. But you'll see as we go through that I kind of stay out of your way. I give you all the material that you need, but you have the freedom to present it as you like. I do want to mention also that there are companion books for this. There is a beginning piano theory, beginning piano technique, beginning piano multi-key reading, and beginning piano Christmas songs. So there are other books to use along with this. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on page 4 of this book. And the first thing you're going to notice is that we start right on the staff. There's no pre-staff in this book. So it's kind of a bit more old-fashioned that way. But I think really with older beginners, that's okay. You'll also notice that I start in middle C. And if I'm really honest, middle C position is my favorite place to start with any student. I have a couple reasons for it. One is that I think it is actually the easiest place for students to start and understand how the staff works. Middle C is the most natural landmark note, right? It's so distinctive that even when students can't remember any other notes on the staff, they almost always remember middle C. So you've always got that anchor. I also like middle C position because we have all of the notes in the C major scale, right? Not just the C5 finger position. And if we add sharps or flats, we can play in different keys. We can play in F major and G major. We can play in B flat major. We can play in A minor. So there's a lot of great things about music written in middle C position. But of course, the tricky thing is, especially with adult students, is that if you're in middle C position with a full-grown hand, those two thumbs, fighting over middle C. So I have designed these middle C pieces where that's not such an issue, but also you'll see we don't stay in middle C position for a long time. This is to get you started. And what you're going to learn in middle C position are repeated notes, steps, or seconds if you want to call them seconds, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4 time signature, and eighth notes. Okay, so just some basic rhythms and how the staff works reading steps up and down. Okay, so we're going to go on to page 7. And we have a piece here called Melody. And this is where we are going to move the left hand down to play in the C5 finger position. But we don't just start out with that. On the first line, we are still in middle C position. You can see the left hand fourth finger is on the G. And so the thumb is still on middle C. So what we're going to do is change position. And if you look at measure 13, now the thumb plays G. Okay, so it's that shift from fourth finger on G to thumb on G. The idea that when the 4 is on G, we're reading notes up to middle C. And when the thumb is on G, we're going to read those notes that step down from G. And that's our introduction to C position. On page 9, we're going to look at thirds or skips for the first time with sunny C and cloudy D. You can call them skips, you can call them thirds. That is totally up to you and what you feel is appropriate for the particular student that you're working with. In sunny C, we're looking at thirds on lines in the right hand and in the bass staff thirds in spaces. Cloudy D, all we do is move the two hands up one note, and now we read space note thirds in the right hand, line note thirds in the left hand. If you want to talk about sunny C being in major and cloudy D being in minor, that's up to you, but you might want to wait a page. So if you'll turn the page to page 10, moving up and a little blue. Here we're introducing sharp and flat. In moving up, we actually move the second finger up from D to D sharp, so it becomes an actual movement up. In a little blue, we move the third finger from E down to the E flat. Then on page 11, now we have cloudy C and sunny D. So what we've done is in what used to be sunny C, we've put that flat in and now it's cloudy C. And what used to be cloudy D, we've put the sharp in and now it's sunny D. So again, if this is where you want to talk about major and minor, this is a great place to do it. Or you can simply talk about flats, lowering a note, and sharps, raising a note. You can give as much or as little information as you think is appropriate for that particular student. What I have done here is I have put those altered notes, those black key notes, in the third finger of both hands, the longest finger, which helps keep it, I think, more comfortable, especially for a full-grown hand. Okay, let's go on to page 12. we have a piece called Meditation, where we're going to learn about fifths, blocked and broken fifths. So in writing this book, I really kept in mind that it can be a little trickier for older beginners to find music that feels sophisticated enough, that doesn't sound too childlike. So I wanted to make sure to include things that would appeal to an older beginner, a teenager or an adult beginner. And so there's a variety of styles that we're going to cover because I was also keeping in mind that we're getting ready after this book where we can go into actual literature. So I wanted to have things in different styles, Baroque and classical styles, Romantic styles, and even more contemporary styles. So in Meditation, we get to use the pedal for the first time. And what I want you to notice is that in bar 5, I'm very specific about when to lift the pedal and then when to put it back down. You could actually write in the counts, and they would lift the pedal on count 1 and put the pedal back down on count 3. So the timing of it becomes very specific. 1, 2, 3, 4. We move down to the nearest black key. And the hands move back to the starting position. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pedal, up, pedal. And now the left hand has a larger move, but there is a retard, so they can slow down to take the time to find it. But really the key thing to show a student is that in bar 15, their left hand fifth finger is on G, and then in bar 16, their thumb is on G. And that's really the way for them to feel that move. Let's go into page 14. On page 14, there are 2 minuets, and you can see now we're moving to the G major 5-finger position with the left hand in the middle of the keyboard. So this is obviously a style that you would find in a Baroque suite maybe, or in a sonata movement from the classical period to have 2 minuets like this. So once my students have these 2 minuets learned, what I like to have them do then is play them as one piece where they will play the minuet 1, the minuet 2, and then da capo, the minuet 1, because that is what you would do also in a Baroque suite or a classical sonata. And then one more little twist I like to make, which I'm going to play for you now, is I like to play minuet 2 with the third lowered. So they play B flat, so it's in G minor. Da capo minuet 1. And add a little retard to finish. So it really makes a nice complete piece. In mirror dance, we now move the left hand on page 15. Sorry, page 15, mirror dance. We move the left hand low now for the G major 5-finger position, and we're working on developing just a little bit of facility here with these eighth notes. But what I want you to notice is in bar 3, where the hands play together, they play in contrary motion, which means that the same fingers play at the same time, which is really the easiest way to start with hands together playing. Then on page 16, bagpipes. At the beginning of bagpipes, now what we're doing is moving the right hand up higher for the C position. So we're reading at the top of the staff. You see in the piece before, of course, we moved to the low G position, looking at the bottom of the staff. We're going to look at the top of the staff now. But then if you look at bar 9, we've taken the same melody that we started with, we've transposed it to G and put it in the left. So with bagpipes, we're going to practice reading at the extremes of the grand staff. Let's move on now to page 19. Page 19, chords in C and chords in G. So One of the things that I kept in mind as well in writing something for older beginners, in my experience, adult students or any older beginner tend to grasp concepts, grasp music theory pretty easily and quickly, much more so than maybe a 6 or 7-year-old. But they tend to not develop technically as quickly. You know, a younger student tends to be more flexible, you know, and freer with their fingers, whereas an adult beginner can be a little more stiff. So while I sped up the introduction of concepts, I actually slowed down the technical demands. So you'll notice there are no block chords at all in this book. It's only broken chords. Because I find with an adult beginner, if they play too many block chords to start, it can really make their arm and hand get a little bit tight and stiff. And we really don't want that to happen at all. But we do want to talk about chords a bit here. So it's basically just the 1, 4, and 5 chords. So C major, F major, and G major. But again, I've left it so that you can give as much or as little information as you want. You can just identify C, F, and G chords. You can call them 1, 4, and 5. You can call them primary triads. You can give as much information as you want. Chords in G is the exact same piece. It's just transposed so that we have 1, 4, and 5 in the key of G. And this is a great piece to come back to every time a student learns a new key, and they can practice their primary chords this way. I love teaching, actually, I'm a multi-key teacher, and I love teaching all 12 major 5-finger positions within that first year of lessons. So this is a great little etude to use, which is also why I've got that beginning multi-key reading book that goes along with this. Okay, let's go on to page 20, conversation on page 20. So we do want to open the hand to a 6th, because when they get to the prep level repertoire series, they will need to be able to play 6ths at that level. But I'm very careful about how we progress to opening the hand to the 6th from the 5th. So the basic idea is that there are 2 ways to reach a 6th. And one is to either move the thumb away from the fingers or move the fingers away from the thumb. We want to try to always keep the fingers on consecutive keys, and we just have the open space here between 1 and 2. And this is what conversation is designed to build into the movement. We move the thumb up to A, but 2 on F keeps those fingers together. And then we close to a 5th, open to a 6th, and close. The right hand mirrors this exactly with the thumb moving down, but the 2 on the D helps make sure that those fingers stay together as we close to the 5th, 6th, 5th. Now the other way. Now we're going to move the fingers away from the thumb. So we take 5 up to A, but 3 goes with it. And by putting 3 on F, that keeps the fingers together. And then we close our hand to the 5th. Left hand does the same thing. The 5 goes down to B, but that 3rd finger is what helps keep the fingers together. And then we close the hand. On page 21, we have 2 pieces in minor keys, intensity in E minor and elegy in A minor. We need these keys for the prep level literature. So we wanted to get those in. And of course, those are relative minors to the majors that they've already learned. Page 22. We have 2 very familiar pieces, the Minuet in G, the melody from the Minuet in G, and of course the Ode to Joy. My mother, who was also a piano teacher, swore that somehow every person who took piano lessons was just born knowing this tune, which sometimes it does seem to be that way. With the Minuet in G, what you can do once the student has this melody learned is have them play it an octave higher, and then you can play the left hand part with them so that it will sound, you know, like the Minuet in G. But you've also probably noticed as we've been going through the book that there are track numbers at the start of each piece. So at the back of the book is a CD, and on the CD are accompaniment recordings, and they're at different rates of speed. You'll have a slower, a moderate, and then a more up-to-tempo version of it. What I really love about this CD is that they are not orchestrated or synthesized sounds. It's actual piano accompaniments. Diane Heidi wrote and played these and recorded them to go with these pieces which I just love. Because then they actually get practice playing with the sound of a piano rather than synthesized sounds. I do want to say a couple things. Yes, it is on a physical CD still. We are gradually getting all of my books that had physical CDs transferred to our streaming library, which is available on the CHOS website. But this one hasn't moved to the head of the queue yet, but it is in the queue. So eventually it will get transferred and be streamable. But right now you've got the CD at the back of the book, which you can download onto a computer, or your whatever your favorite MP3 player is. You can download that CD. All right, the other thing, what else did I wanted to say something else? Oh, I know. People always want to know about the accompaniments, if they're available in print. They are not. And the reason is the way she plays them. And you'll hear this when you listen to it. She uses the full range of the keyboard, and it would not be possible to play them with your student at one piano because of the way she wrote these. She was also improvising a lot of them, and I don't even know if she could write them down, you know what I mean. But anyway, I think you'll really enjoy them. I like using them a lot. It really fills out the sound beautifully. The Ode to Joy, I want to point out one thing here. I always think the trickiest thing is the dotted rhythm in the fourth bar. But notice what I've done here. Instead of writing a dotted rhythm, I've written a quarter note tied to an eighth note. And I just think this is the easiest way to introduce a dotted rhythm, because then they've got the right rhythm, and a lot of times what I do is I take out the tie entirely at first. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we put in the tie 1, 2, 3, 4. And then eventually we'll see it written as a dotted quarter with an eighth. Page 23, the final piece in this book, called Twilight. This is always the favorite piece in the book, so it's a really good one to finish with. They get to use pedal again, and they're really using the C, F, and G chords that they learned earlier on and moving around to them. Here's the big moment. Retard and cross hands. So students love the sound of it. And you can even put a repeat sign and they can play it a second time through, maybe an octave higher as well. The last page of the book has a music dictionary. And of course that's also the inside of that cover is where the disc is as well. So as I mentioned, there are those books that go along with this book, the theory, the technique, the multi-key reading, and the Christmas songs. So from that book, you can go right into any prep level repertoire book, meaning the Baroque and Classical, the Romantic and 20th century, the Etudes, or Essential Piano Repertoire. You are good to go right into there. But the next book I'm going to show you is my sequel to Beginning Piano Repertoire, and that is Progressive Piano Repertoire. And what this has in common with that book is it's what I call a page turner. It's in order of difficulty, and you just go from one page to the next, turning the page, going from one piece right to the next piece, knowing that it will gradually and very systematically become slightly more difficult as you progress through the book. So if we start right on page 2, of Progressive Piano Repertoire with this piece called Entrada, which is in the F major 5-finger position. We did learn about F major. I just didn't show it to you in the other books. They have played an F major before, and we can practice the staccato technique. The kind of technique I use for this staccato is where we touch the key, and then we push up, and then we retouch the key and push up again. It's a very controlled, rhythmic, and a good sound. Especially at this slower speed. Much later on when students are playing quickly, we do more of a hand movement for staccato. But when it's slower, this kind of staccato technique where we touch the key and push up, I think is the best way to go. Controls the rhythm, controls the sound. It also helps to develop a little more strength and stability, you know, in that knuckle, in that joint, I mean, that collapses so often, if they get used to putting a little more energy right there. The other thing you'll notice with Entrada is that we have independent lines between the hands. We're not just playing melody with chords. And that is something that gets developed consistently through these books, so that we get that coordination of single lines. In Promenade, we have a piece by Reinagel. And one of my favorite things about the way Reinagel writes is that he most often puts the hands in two different five-finger positions. So we have a piece in C major. The left hand is over the C five-finger position, but the right hand, the third finger, is on C, which puts the hand really in an A minor five-finger position. But if you look at bar 2, the right-hand thumb is going to move down to G. So there's that way of opening to a 6 that we looked at in Beginning Piano Repertoire, just moving the thumb away from the fingers. Now in the second line we have a sequence, so we want to start a little quieter, build it up a little bit, and then here's the most. On page 3 we have Carousel by Behrens. So you're going to start seeing now a variety of 18th and 19th and early 20th century composers. We're also going to encounter a few pieces by Diane Heidi and some pieces by myself. So you're getting a real big variety of time periods as they progress. You will also find that you are going to see pieces in here you've not seen in any of my other books. That was important to me, that we come out with some pieces we haven't taught before that I like, or I mean that we haven't put in print before, but I've taught before, but have not been in print. And Carousel is one of those. So here we are putting the right hand up higher in the C5 finger position. Now, instead of a sequence here for the next two lines, we have a repetition, a repeated phrase. So we want each part to get a little louder. Second time is more. Third time is still more. And then most with a retard. And that sort of thing happens so often in music, that long, gradual crescendo. One of the hardest things, I think, for students to practice that. So with the dynamic markings I've put in there, we want to start building that skill, listening carefully as we do that. I want to jump ahead to page 8. Relay race on page 8. So D major, here we are in D major. I also love using this to transpose to other five-finger positions as we learn them. But here we are in D with that nice F sharp under the long third fingers. And again, getting experience at playing single lines in both hands. Notice the last 4 bars of the piece. Again, we have one of these long, gradual crescendos over a repeated phrase. Let's go on now to page 10, the Shepherd's Flute. You might have seen this piece before, but I always love to teach this piece because it has a very evocative sound, and the way we can practice using the pedal is so great. Like meditation in Beginning Piano Repertoire, where I showed you could write in the counts to get the timing of the pedal, you can do the same thing here. Pedal on beat 4, lift the pedal on 3, pedal down on beat 4. Now here there's no pedal, we lift both hands and start the next phrase. Now just after the first note, to catch the repeated notes, same thing, lower. Now, if you're feeling really brave, teach your students to use the left pedal to get this pianissimo. And when they play the last note, I always say, hold it until the sound really dies away. And when it's almost gone, lift your hands and your foot at the same time. All right, page 11, the Minuet in F, another piece you've probably seen, but I always like to point out a couple of things in this piece. By this time, most of my students would have been already practicing chord progressions like that, along with their scales. And I like to show them how a composer actually uses that chord progression in a piece of music. So we look at bar 1, we've got our 1 chord, right? Bar 3, that's the 4 chord. Bar 5, we go back to the 1 chord. Bar 7 uses the 5/7 chord, and then back to 1. So there's that chord progression. It doesn't look like it does in their technique book, but it is that chord progression, and a composer uses it to put together a piece of music. But the main thing I want to point out here is at bar 9, where we have octaves in the left hand. I think that this third line of music with the octaves is usually what attracts students to this piece. I know it attracted me to it when I was a kid. It just sounds so big and important with those octaves. But sometimes you'll have a student who won't be able to reach the octave. This is how I solve it. When it's forte, we play the lower note. And then the upper note for the repetition that's soft. And you get a really wonderful contrast dynamically. All right, let's move ahead now to page 16. Page 16, Crossing the Old Bridge. So this is a piece by Gurlitt. That is not his title. This piece had no title, but I wanted to give it something. And I gave it Crossing the Old Bridge because it's all about crossing the hand over the thumb, bringing the bridge of the hand smoothly over the thumb, like in a scale. And on page 18, classic sonatina. So this is a sonatina that I wrote for students. I love teaching sonatinas. I love writing sonatinas. I like teaching them because it's such a great way to introduce form. And I think that sonata allegro form is probably the most important form in the history of Western music. It's really everything in the Baroque period led up to this form, and everything after the classical period was sort of a dismantling of this form, if you want to think it that way. So when I write a sonatina, I definitely have a first theme, a second theme, a development section, and a recapitulation, so that we are following traditional sonatina form, and I always mark them in the score so that students can see how it's put together and how themes are used and transform in a sonatina. Let's go on now to page 26. Page 26, the German Dance by Haydn. More practice of playing in D major. And I would still be teaching a staccato touch from the key for this piece. Otherwise, they're going to get going too fast. And when they get to the third line of music, it can really crash. So we don't want to be too fast on those first two lines. Now let's go to page 29, The Bridge to Forever on page 29. It's a beautiful piece by Diane Heidi using just open fifth accompaniment in the left hand. with lots of pedal, and the right hand gets a lot of practice at reaching the interval of a seventh and a couple times the interval of an octave. And let's go on now to page 32. Lights, Camera, Action on page 32. This is the piece that I wrote in a sort of early 20th century style, almost Shostakovich type style. And then when we go to page 34, the Prelude and Gigue, completely different style. They're back to a Baroque style piece. Now, one of the first things I do with teaching this, of course, is go through and have the student block the intervals. It's really just sixths and sevenths in the right hand. And then when they play hands together, one of the most important things is that they release the left hand note when the right hand fifth finger plays. So down, release. And so on. And then the Gigue on page 35. And then on page 36, the final piece in the book, Homage to Kabalevsky. I love Kabalevsky pieces. I love his writing. I love teaching them. We can't use them as freely in books now as we used to. I used to put a lot of them in my books, but there were changes to copyright laws, so we can't use them as freely as we used to. So what I've taken to doing is writing pieces in a similar style to Kabalevsky. And this particular piece was inspired by a piece by Kabalevsky called Galop. So that takes us to the end of the book. On the next page, on the inside of the back cover, you'll notice that we have the table of contents listed two other ways. At the front of the book, it's listed in page order, but on that inside of the back cover, we have it by alphabetical by composer, and then alphabetical by title, because there are so many different composers and pieces in this book. I just thought that would be kind of helpful to include it that way. All right, that takes us through those two books. When a student finishes with Progressive Piano Repertoire, they are well prepared to be in level 2 of the Piano Repertoire series. A really good student might go into level 3 of the repertoire series after that, but I tend to want to go a little bit, just be safe, and I would say really into level 2 for a little while before going on to level 3. Okay, the next book that I want to show you is 3 Sonatinas. You might be familiar with a book that I have called Sonatina Festival, which is a book of 3 sonatinas, elementary sonatinas, 1 in C, 1 in G, and 1 in F. And I was looking at that this summer, and I noticed that I wrote it in the year 2000. And I thought, well, 20 years later, maybe I should write some more sonatinas. So that's what I did this past summer. And again, it's 3 elementary sonatinas, 1 in F, 1 in G, and 1 in C. And each one gets a little bit harder than the other. So I'm just going to play through these sonatinas for you. So this is Sonatina number 1 from 3 Sonatinas. And then on to the second movement. Each sonatina has 3 movements, and the middle movement is always a slow movement. And the third movement is a rondo, and all 3 sonatinas have a rondo third movement. All right, sonatina number 2. This is our sonatina in G. And the slow movement. then our rondo movement, which plays back and forth with major and minor. And then our big finale with the Sonatina in C, Sonatina number 3. So that's 3 sonatinas. As you can see, they are progressive in difficulty. And if you like teaching sonatinas like I do and getting them started early, it's a nice new set to do that with. Okay, our final book for today is called Perspectives. Now we're going into a completely different arena here. So everything I just showed you was really for elementary, later elementary students, sort of very early intermediate, but really just later elementary. This book, though, is really for intermediate and upper intermediate students. I wrote the pieces in this book last spring and summer when we were all really locked down as a result of the pandemic, when everything changed. We started teaching online. We couldn't see our friends like we usually do, and life just felt very, very different. And so I turned to writing some pieces, each of which were inspired by something to do with those months. The very first one you may have seen before. We did send this piece out late spring as a free gift to piano teachers for a while, but now it's in this book. And this is called Long Summer Days. And my idea for this piece, I was thinking about when I was a child and in the summer when school was out, how very, very long the days could feel. And so then I started thinking, about the students who with the lockdown from the pandemic, and how restricted their activities are. The summer days must have felt interminably long. So that was the idea behind Long Summer Days. The second piece in the book, on page 6, Strength and Courage, really just was inspired by feeling like everything we were going through in the spring and summer was just going to take a lot of strength and courage to get through. The third piece in the book, comfort. So this was written in the summer, and it was a very hot day, and I was sitting in my bedroom, in a chair in my bedroom by a window, and all of a sudden just this little breeze started coming through, and it was just such a feeling of relief. It didn't last long, but it was just a little bit of relief. And that was actually the genesis of the musical idea. The middle part of this piece is what I wrote first, wanting to get that fluttery, light, cooling breeze coming through. This was, however, also the day that we met for the first time with my mother's oncologist. And we got some rather grim news that day. So then that was forming the music around this little bit of relief in the middle. All right, the fourth piece, the challenge. So we all faced a lot of challenges last spring and summer. And we were facing a challenge in our own family. And then I wanted to write something that would be a challenge for students because normally they don't have to play a lot of scales with their left hand. So I wanted to give them a bit of a left hand etude. All right, the next piece, benediction. So I mentioned earlier that my mother was a piano teacher. She was also a really wonderful pianist. And she played the piano every day until just about 5 days before she passed away last August. And as I was writing the pieces for this book, I would send each piece to her as I finished it. And she'd play it We talk about it. And Long Summer Days, I know she played. She loved playing that. In fact, that was the last piece she played ever for her church service. Of course, they were on Zoom by then, but she played Long Summer Days for her church service. But this particular one, Benediction, I couldn't help but having her really strongly in mind, writing this piece with what we were facing. And she never mentioned it. I didn't know if she liked it, if she played it. She never said a word about this piece. Well, I arrived home, unfortunately, 3 days after she passed. But when I walked into this very room that I'm in right now, and this was her piano, this piece was the top piece on the music rack. So I then knew it was the last piece that she played. All right, the final piece in the book, White Shadows. Toccata in black and white. So the thing to know about this piece is that the A section, the left hand is entirely on black keys and the right hand is on white keys. And in the B section, the middle section, I reverse that. The left hand only plays white keys and the right hand only plays black keys. I called it White Shadows, though in the end, it was really actually inspired by the unrest and the riots that occurred last summer. perspectives. So I hope you enjoy those pieces. It was a wonderful experience writing them, and I love sharing them with you. So hopefully they will find a way into your heart as well. Thank you so much. Anyway, so that really brings us to everything I had to show you today. So I would be more than happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you for all of that, Keith, and thanks again to everybody for joining us today. As promised, we do have a special offer for 50% off on Keith Snell titles. These are select titles and some other pieces or some other books from our larger catalog, which you're welcome to take advantage of. And I'm going to post that special discount information in the chat here. So please feel free to copy and paste that into another document or click on the link right away. You do need to enter the code SNELL21 at checkout or prior to checkout, and that discount will get deducted off your order total. That's a really important step. I can't emphasize that enough. If you don't hit apply, then it's not going to get that discount taken off, so please just make sure you do that. Did I post this? Not yet. There it is. We also have a couple other pieces of information before we jump into the questions here that we want you to know about. Keith has several social media channels that are great follows. So if you want to look him up on Facebook or YouTube, these are kind of the usernames. Is that right, Keith?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was reading some of the questions, but what did you just say, Carl?
He's
used to me ignoring him, so it's nothing new. I'm sorry.
I just posted in the chat both your Facebook
and
profiles and the YouTube channel is probably
great.
the right way to
Yeah,
say it.
that's right. I forgot to mention that. Everything you've heard today, if you want to listen to it again, I've made video recordings of all of it that I've posted to my YouTube channel, and especially the Progressive Piano Repertoire. I play every piece in the book, and I give just a few tips before playing it as well. Did I just hear a storm?
Yeah, there's some lightning out here.
Oh my word!
I'm not in a sound studio or in the desert as you may think, but it's kind of rainy here in San Diego, so hopefully that's not too much of a distraction.
No, it's
but there's
fine.
a little bit of excitement. The one time a year there's lightning.
So please find me on Facebook. You can always message me there with questions, and you can always subscribe to the YouTube channel and get all the videos I've made of the various books. I put them all up there. So I'm looking at some of these questions in the Q&A.
Not to step on your toes, Keith.
No, that's fine.
One more post here in the chat. There are two playlists that we like to share too. And I know one of the questions earlier was if there's a CD for perspectives, and there's not, but you can go see all the pieces. Is that correct, Keith?
On my YouTube channel or on the product page at the Chose website.
Okay. So
there is a video
options.
link there too. So if you go to the Chose website to buy the book, you will see there's always a sample pages and there's a video link there as well.
Excellent.
So
I'll clear out of the way now.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So we have a question here. What is the estimation for students to complete beginning piano repertoire? I assume you mean, this is from Vivi in Edmond, Oklahoma. And I'm assuming you mean how long should they take to finish the book? I never predetermine that with a student because it's never the same, Some students take longer and some students go quickly. So I don't think I would give a definite answer to that. So I'm sorry, that's not an answer, but that's my answer for that. Then the second one, they're asking if they liked the sound today, and they were asking if there were any particular settings or equipment that I used. So I do use a Yeti microphone. So that's hooked in separately. I'm just trying to see if I can get it to the camera. Yeah, there we go. So that's my microphone that I have sitting here. And I do use a Logitech webcam because I think that it looks a little bit better with that. And then the most important thing in Zoom is that you switch off you switch on original sound. You want original sound. And also for echo cancellation, I use aggressive echo cancellation. So those are the main technical tidbits that I have. Oh, and the last thing is I'm actually hardwired into the internet. I'm not using Wi-Fi. I have the Ethernet cable plugged directly in. So I think that might help as well. Okay. And then also 2 days ago, my wonderful, brilliant tuner technician did incredible work on my piano, so that always helps too. He's retired to Santa Fe about 3 years ago, but he was the Steinway tech at Steinway Hall in Dallas, so he really knows what he's doing, and he did some incredible voicing and regulation work for me. So I think that adds to a good sound today. Okay, how do I inspire students to practice who just have excuses? Yeah, you know, it is hard, and we do spend so much of our time motivating students and finding ways to keep them motivated. I do think it's important, you know, when you take a student, that you're very, very clear about your expectations, so that the parents and the child and you are all on the same page about what is going to be expected. And I tell parents that through the 8th grade, I actually consider it their parents' responsibility at home to make sure that the student completes the assignment each week. Once a student is in high school, if a student continues taking piano through high school, I kind of figure the student wants to be there, right? And then it becomes their responsibility. But for the younger students, I want the parents to check in and make sure that the students are completing the assignments. Other than that, you know, I'll tell you, stickers, of course, are always motivating. The most motivating thing I've ever used is music money. I don't know if you've seen that. I know Cho sells it. It was the three women. What are they called? Anyway, who came up with it. But it's fantastic, and students will do anything for that money. I mean, it's just amazing. So I use that a lot too, and I find that very, very, very useful. Other than that, we just got to keep plugging away. But I also think for more long-term goals, the more recitals or class get-togethers you can have, the better. And I always try to have something about every 2 months that students have to be ready for. You know, we have the Halloween recital, we have the Christmas recital, we have sonata contest, we have our exams, we have National Piano Guild, we have spring recital, so there's always something that they have to be getting ready for. And finally, my students also come twice a week. They come once for private and once for group. And every time a student has a piece learned, they play it in groups. So they get really used to playing and hearing the other students. And I find that's very motivating as well. Okay, let's see. In this promotion are only the books for you presented today. Carl, you'll need to answer that one.
Yeah, well, all of the books that were presented today are included on the promotion, but we do include nearly all of Keith's publications. There are a few that aren't necessarily on there, and some selections from our greater catalog. I'll post that link again here in the chat, and if you
Deborah
go to the
has
link,
a question also
it'll all
about
be
the
listed
discount.
on that landing page.
Deborah has a question about the discount code that you might want to answer as well.
So there is a link and a promo code. It isn't Keith20, it is Snell21. So I will post that again here.
And then will there be a replay of this webinar? At some point, yes, Carl, there will be, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
we're planning to post this up. So if you're not signed up for our mailing list, and I assume you are because you all came here, you should receive a notification once we post that up online, and you'll be able to see that probably both on our website and on YouTube, but we'll see how that plays out. But please stay tuned, and again, if you're not on our mailing list, then we encourage you to join. That too is through kjos.com.
So Marley, is it Marley or Marty? Marley Schaula in Germany uses Piano 10 and wants to know if there'll be a German translation for it. So the person you want to write to about that is Mark Chose, and tell him you would like to have that. So you might want to have the Chose email address and send a request for that. That's the best way to get that done. Right, Carl?
Yeah, any requests, please, or questions, or if you're too shy to ask something in this webinar, please email us at email@kjos.com. That's email@kjos.com. That too is in the chat as well.
So this next question, there's a lot to unpack here. They're great questions, but it's really about 3 or 4 questions in one. First of all, what are my thoughts about kids learning pop songs of their choice? I don't really have a problem with it mostly. The problem is that so many pop songs are awfully difficult for students to play. So what I usually find is that if a student brings a pop song in that they want to play, by the time I've shown them how hard it is, I mean, that sounds kind of mean. That's not what I do. I help them learn to do it, but they kind of figure out it's kind of hard, and sometimes their interest does wane. But you know what? If they really want to learn something, I will help them with it, absolutely, because I want to keep them motivated. It's not my first thing to teach. I am definitely a classical teacher, a literature teacher, but I also figure that my job is to give them the skills so that they can work on their own, so that they can learn a piece of music that they want to play on their own, so they can do with this what they want. So if I can help them a little bit, that's fine. And even if it turns out that piece is too hard, I had a student last year who brought in a book of pieces that were from some computer game. And I don't know, he really liked the music, and his father found him the book of the pieces from the computer game. And I went ahead and worked with him a little bit on them, because there's always things you can work on. But you know, after a while, he kind of suddenly that book stopped coming to the lessons. What are my thoughts on beginner notes? Do you mean teaching reading notes? So, you know, I really have students do a lot of note naming. We do a lot of note naming drills with flashcards and note spellers, and we play and sing the names of the notes and the melodies that they're reading. But we also, of course, name a lot of intervals. You know, it isn't just one or the other. They have to be able to recognize intervals and chord shapes, but they've got to know the name of every line and space, you know, on the staff, or else you don't know where to put your hand, you know. And I think people can get a little overly on the other side about just reading intervals and shapes. But you have to know the names of the notes. And the best way for me to illustrate that is if you try to play a piece that's in a different clef, I mean, like in the alto clef or some movable clef, you're going to really struggle. Because even though you might recognize the intervals, it's really hard to get, you know, get all the right notes. So I think that the two go hand in hand. And the thing about recognizing intervals is that it's one thing to say, oh, well, that's a fourth. But the real magic is that when you see a fourth, you know what it feels like in your hand. That's the really important thing about recognizing intervals. Okay, do you plan to organize a workshop on your sight reading series in the future? Yes, I do. Let's see. Would you mind explaining a little bit about exams? Oh, okay, well that depends on, so right now I live in England, and so I've been preparing students for ABRSM exams. But when I lived in California, there they had the Certificate of Merit program, and so we had those exams. And that's all I meant for exams. So it just depends, you know, what exams, you know, because usually each state has its own thing set up. You know, whether it's a state-run thing or they're participating in the MTNA, whatever. You know, and I just, anything you can come up with that helps create a goal and a marker for progress. You know, even if you create your own exam in-house, whatever it is. Can I talk a bit about, can you talk a bit about your sight reading series? Oh, golly. Well, let's see, just quickly, it's 11 levels, preparatory through level 10. Diane Heidi wrote the first 2 books. The level 2 book we shared, she wrote half and I wrote half, and then up from there, from level 3 through 10, is all literature based. And so I selected literature, and I did my best to choose literature you would not have seen before, you know, so that it's actually sight reading. And we had a variety of styles and techniques as you go. And we say that they're for sight reading or short study. Sometimes you need to have a little short piece to spend a week or 2 on, you know, not just sight reading. But anyway, that kind of gives you a little bit of idea. But, you know, you could go to the CHOS website, and there's probably some sample pages up there. And I would encourage you to take a look at it, yeah. Let's see, beginner sheet music where the letter names are written inside the notes. What about it? That's not a question. Okay, so if you want to expand on that, you're happy,
I
please
think
do.
too, just to hop in quickly, if you'd
Yeah.
like to ask a verbal question, we love to hear from you too. So feel free to raise your hand. We can promote you up to speak. Otherwise, we'll carry on through these other. Oh,
Yeah,
and it
finally
looks like
somebody's, yeah.
Ruby is actually the person who submitted this last question, and she threw her hand up right away. So let's.
All right, let's do that one then. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get Ruby's.
Do you want to
let's get Ruby's
unmute
question.
Ruby and?
Yeah. Hi, Keith. Sorry for
Hi.
the
That's fine.
So I specifically mean with very very beginner students who are really anxious to learn pop songs that they love. The music where the note
Yeah.
inside. What are your thoughts on those? Because I noticed that they often are not correct for the timing, so it makes it a little bit tricky.
I know.
Sounds-
So I'm going to say in Piano Town, I don't know if you've seen Piano Town, but in our primer level where it's off staff notation with the letter names, we were fanatical about getting the spacings right so that it looked like the correct rhythm. But I know what you mean. But still, I still like to have students do that, especially if they're just starting out and they want to play something. I go ahead and you can always work on something, whether it's hand position or counting or whatever, or playing a musical phrase or anything. So I wouldn't just, I'd find the best quality you can, but I wouldn't just ditch it and not do it because there's something that's bothering you. There's always something that you can do, and if it's going to motivate the student, to do some work, that's always a great thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're not related to Stacy Fradkin, are you?
No.
Okay, never mind.
I have Piano Town, just so you know. Also, I've used it with a lot of my young students.
Oh, thank you. Great. Yeah. All right. The last Q&A one is just about getting the CD onto digital. It'll happen. It will happen. It just, I have a lot of CDs in the catalog, and so, one at a time, they're all getting transferred. So it will get there, I promise. All right. Should we go to the chat? Are there questions in the chat?
We have one more person with their hand raised.
Oh,
we can
go
certainly
for it.
Scroll back up through the chat here in a sec.
I love the raised hands.
Rhonda, if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi. This is Rhonda Sprague in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I've been teaching privately for several years, one-on-one, and I just moved to Gettysburg, and there's a piano lab that I'm going to teach at in the Arts Council. So I'll be teaching in a group in a class setting, and I was wondering how your materials might adapt to a class setting.
Were there specific books of mine that you're asking about, or just in general? I mean, are you thinking of the piano? Sorry, just in general.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the beginning piano repertoire that we looked at first today could be really successful in a class situation. Because you can really slow things down physically. You won't have a lot of technical barriers, and you can really look at each thing. And use the theory book with it as well. So I actually think that one would be particularly good in a class setting. I would also take a look at the Level 1 Piano Town lesson book. I think that could be used successfully in a class situation as well. And then, of course, with the beginning piano repertoire that we looked at today, because it has that CD, they can play along. And I assume they have headsets maybe, as well, so you can work individually with them. But
yes,
I would think, if it's a beginning class, I would say Beginning Piano Repertoire and Piano Town Level 1 would be the two books I would probably steer you towards.
Okay. Yes, they do have headphones, and so they can work either individually, or I can turn on the mic so they can work as a group. And
then you might also want to get for individual. You might want to also have the sight reading. Either maybe at the prep level sight reading book. And that's something they can work individually. Although they can do it together as well and keep each other in rhythm in sight reading, can't they? That's always a challenge. So maybe add that one into the prep level sight reading book along with it. I think those three could work pretty well in a group situation.
Thank you. We have some questions in the Q&A, but did you want to scroll up and see if we have some chat questions, Keith? Or I think most of them were comments. I was trying to monitor that as we were going along
Okay.
here.
Oh, somebody wants to know if I would please restate or put in the comments what I'm using for such a clear reception, the clearest webinar they've attended. Well, that's really nice. Carl, is there anything magic you're doing on your end? So I'm using the Yeti microphone, and I am plugged in with the Ethernet. I'm not using Wi-Fi. I'm plugged directly into the internet, and I think that might really help a lot. But of course, it's originating in San Diego with Carl, so I don't know if he's doing anything in particular there.
Well, I think the two things that I do and learned early on from great piano teachers like Keith and the Bastions is that you want to turn on original sound, and then I believe it's is it enable background noise or
No, what you want to aggressive echo cancel. That's what I use. I've got
Okay.
aggressive echo cancel on right now, and I have on original sound. So those two things really help. A good mic really helps, and I think try being hardwired into the internet rather than Wi-Fi. And then the Yeti microphone. Yeah.
We have another hand up here.
Okay,
in the
go
audience.
ahead. I like the hands. I think that's a great way to do it.
Deborah,
Oh, it's
do you wanna-
Deborah.
You
Hi,
mentioned,
Deborah.
hi, you mentioned that that there is a theory book and a technique book in Christmas. Are they different? Do they go specifically with this course?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, they do.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The technique book starts in a very different way too. It's all off staff because it's just rote patterns that you would work with a student, and it moves them all over the keyboard, starting in very 2-note patterns, then 3-note patterns, then 5-note patterns. And so it really, especially with an older student, it gets them freed up a bit and moving around the keyboard. I really like that book a lot.
Diana Lemaire is asking whether the 50% discount applies to all books or just some of them. The answer is there is a select number of books from the catalog that this applies to. It is most of Keith's catalog, but again, those will all be listed in that link that I sent in the chats. But I'll send that to you as well directly in this Q&A question. But let me post that again here in just a moment.
I'm scrolling through the chat, just in case there's any questions in the chat. You know what, if you put a question in the chat and would want me to answer it, because there's so many things in the chat, if you want to either raise your hand or write it into the Q&A, that way I won't miss it. That's probably the best way to do it. Somebody wants to know if I have a list of repertoire for intermediate students. You know, there's a free brochure you can get from CHOS called Piano Repertoire Teacher's Index. And it lists every single piece that I have in the piano repertoire books. In the front part, it lists it by level. And then in the second part of it, it's alphabetical by composer. And so it might, in that part, it might say Clementi and it'll list the Sonatinas. And then there'll be a column that says exactly which books and which pages those pieces are on. So that's a pretty useful thing to see if you want to look through the graded repertoire and see where things are. From beginner piano, where does Piano Town fit in? It's a similar teaching style. I would say that beginning piano repertoire really is a distillation of primer and level 1. So it starts a little harder than the primer, but it never gets quite as hard as level 1. So, but the concepts, because the way I teach is the way I teach. The concepts are presented in the same order and in a similar way. So it could be used, beginning piano repertoire can be used as a supplementary reading book for a younger student who's in Piano Town, primer or level 1. Could you share more about how to execute the different staccatos and when? Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically, I want to make sure that you can see my hand. I need to move this out of the way so I can see the keyboard. Yeah. Okay, so when I'm teaching a student to play staccato, I want them to touch the key first and push up off the key. And before the next staccato, they're going to touch the key again. So that it's not from above. It's not this kind of, it's not a tap. It's from the key pushing up. Okay? So I mentioned that it activates that joint that we want to, get more firmness in. It also involves a forward movement of the wrist, which of course we're already trying to do that at the end of a phrase, that little lift. So the staccato is almost like a sped up version of that forward roll, with the hand. And it's just keeping things loose. But later on, when things are fast, we can't play staccato. We can't push up on every key if it's fast. So then it is from the hand, and it's a movement from here down. I mean, I'm exaggerating. It doesn't have to be that high. But it is then from above the key. But that comes much later, when things are faster. I would say probably not before at least level 3 or 4, when we're playing quite a bit quicker. I hope that helped. Do you have a list if we did that? Okay, good. All right. Any other questions? Please put them in the Q&A or raise your hand.
Madeline Gendron has her hand raised, so let's.
Okay.
If you would hit unmute, we're happy to hear your question.
Oh yes, thank you. I just want. My name is Madeleine, and I am in Oregon, Portland, Beaverton, Oregon. Really
Lovely.
enjoy your presentation today. Thank you so much. So I have a studio of about 50 students. I would like to, can you show and tell the level and the name of the second book you presented?
Okay, so that book is called Progressive Piano Repertoire. Here, I'll hold it up to the camera.
Yeah.
Progressive Piano Repertoire. And this spans, it's really late elementary to early intermediate. I would say, if you compare it to my repertoire books, it's basically from preparatory through level 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but there's no level number on that specific book.
No, no, there is not. It's just
Progressive Piano Repertoire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it is progressive, because it starts easy and gradually gets harder, so it couldn't have just one level name to it.
That is actually perfect for our Oregon syllabus, level 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, sure.
Okay.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Yeah.
We have another one here. Rhonda Sprague has another question, I think.
I don't see her hand raised, but we have a couple in the Q&A
okay.
here.
Okay.
How do you get your students to be interested and motivated to play classical music?
Well, I think again, it's when you take a student, I think it's important to be really clear about what it is you do, what it is you teach, so that everybody has the same. We're all on the same page, so they know what to expect. So I'm going to be very clear that I am. My goal is to teach students to play music by the master composers. So I think that's the first thing. You've got to set that out so that there's no surprises there. So you're not surprised about what they want to do, and they're not surprised by what you want to do. So I have to be honest. I have never really had a hard time motivating students to play classics because we started so early on. It's just part of what we do. And if they really want to do a different kind of music, if they deeply want to go into a different kind of music, they will need a different teacher than me. I'm happy to help them a little bit if they bring in a pop song, but it's never going to be the core of the curriculum. But I try to give them the tools so that if they want to work on it, they can. But again, I make that pretty clear from the beginning, so I can't say I've really had a hard time. When students come to me, they know that that will be the core of our technique, of our curriculum. Yeah. You referenced a Sonatina book prior. That book is called Sonatina Festival. So it is similar to that book, as far as leveling, and that there are 3 sonatinas, 1 in C, 1 in G, and 1 in F. Stickers and music money for younger children. How do we keep the terrific teen interested? It is so hard. I think that's where I mentioned about having performance goals about every 2 months, because that feels more typical to what they're experiencing in school. You know, they're not getting stickers and music money in school, but they have to take exams and they have to finish papers and they have deadlines. So I think that with the teenage students, if it's sort of the same thing, they know they've got to play in class, they know they've got to play in a recital, they know there's a festival coming up, they know there's guild coming up, whatever it is, that's the main thing that keeps them going, is that they have performance goals. Because if they don't, they won't practice, you know? I can remember, so I never teach in the summers. I generally, well, I did last summer just because we were all locked down, so I kept teaching. But usually in the summers I'm traveling, and so I don't teach. And I'll never forget years ago having several students who really wanted me to give them the sonata contest piece in June, because they said we can practice it over the summer. I thought, well, I'll tell you what it is, but I doubt that's going to happen. And of course, they never did, right? And there's always, oh, we'll practice so much more in the summer, can't we take lessons? And, you know, it just doesn't happen. I think that there's sort of when you're in school and you're in the momentum of school, that's what helps keep things moving. And so I try to keep things moving with piano lessons with goals, performance goals.
I know Scott has had this question up for a little while now. Do you have a list of repertoire for?
That was why I mentioned the Piano Repertoire Teachers Index.
Oh, okay.
Which is there a link from the website, Carl?
I don't have it right in front of me. I'm going to point everybody. I'm going to defer and kind of delay that answer. So if you have any questions afterwards, including that, I can easily send you a link or a PDF copy of that.
Because that's a freebie that CHOS gives out. So that's probably the best thing to do as far as that goes. Am I teaching in person? So right now I'm in Santa Fe, and I've been in Santa Fe since the middle of November. I had only planned to be here for basically Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then go back. And so I was teaching online then. But the Prime Minister on the 3rd of January announced complete lockdown. And I just thought, well, I don't think I want to go back in the middle of the gray, dismal winter, long, short, dark days and rainy and all of that, where I can't go anywhere or do anything or see my piano students or anything like that. So I decided to just stay here until the lockdown was eased, at least in England, which it is starting to be. So I'm going to go back on the 1st of April. And when I get back, then I can, yes, in England, we will be able to see our students in person. So I will see everyone in person in April for the first time since last March. So I'm really looking forward to that, because I'm sure, like most of you, I am really burned out teaching on Zoom. It's been quite a challenge. I mean, I'm glad we have it, so at least we can keep going, but I am really excited to get back in April and teach in person. Yes, that's it. Janet on the Q&A.
All right.
Found the link to the Piano Teachers Index. Yes, perfect. Good. You know, I should mention also, because I know you've got the primer level lesson book, right, was in their packet. Is that right, Carl?
Yes, that's correct.
So if you go to the product page for Piano Town lessons, primer level, also level 1, you will find a teacher's guide, a link to a teacher's guide there. And I go through literally every page of the primer lesson book and every page of the level 1 lesson book and talk about it. It's basically my workshop on those books written down, but I go into a lot of detail about how to teach it, as well as why we wrote it the way we did.
Got a couple hands shoot up here while we're going through that. Florida, would you like to ask a question? If so, please unmute.
Yes, Keith, I've been using, I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I've been using your method books, and so was actually, I took that on from the Los Angeles branch.
Great.
Off of MTAC, Music Teachers Association of California.
I know it well.
your pieces in perspective. There they're Snell's, they're yours. But you can't say that this would be the 20th century, 21st century, because your styles that you're using there are various. So did you define in that book if it's the classical, if it's the contemporary, if it's romantic, so that if we used it, because we're only supposed to do one syllabus piece, so we can use yours for the other pieces, but how would we position that?
I would still say that that's contemporary music, because I think that has to be, well, I mean, my understanding, it would have to be by date, because it's newly composed music. So I don't know that you could try to classify it by era, you know. I don't know. I think you might need to ask whoever the CM chair is right now about that. I don't know. I would think it would have to be that by the date that it was written more than the style it's written in, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I know what you're saying, because like the only one I would say is sounds like from an earlier era is the Challenge. That I would say that doesn't sound 20th or 21st century, but I think the other four do. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
There were, there's interesting pieces there. I mean, even technically, that technique-wise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I wish I could have a definite answer for you, but I would just say ask your CM chair, or the CM chair for the state. You know. Okay. What else? What health and safety measures will you take for in person? So fortunately, I had my first vaccine shot on Sunday, this past Sunday, and I will get the second one on the 26th. So when I get back to England, I will be fully vaccinated. Will I still wear masks in the lessons? I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet. And I'll probably discuss it with the parents and kind of see where they are. Because all the kids are going back to school on the 8th of March in England. So they will have already been back to school. So that's another reason I'm waiting till April. I kind of want to see how March goes over there, and if they're really going to stick to the further opening up of things in April, because they're kind of doing it month by month. So we'll see. I have one student that I stopped teaching over Zoom because it just didn't work, you know, and then for some students it works, but anyway. Okay, what is the packet of which you speak? Carl, you might want to talk about that. Sanitizing keys, what is best? I like to use those alcohol wipes. You know, every time I get on the airplane, I have the flight attendant bring me a whole thing of them. They're very nice about that. But I really like those alcohol wipes that are individually wrapped. I think that's what I use.
We do have another hand up here from Judith in the audience.
Great. Hi, Judith. Make sure to unmute. Judith, do you have a question, Judith? You need to unmute if you do. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. First of all, it was a wonderful presentation. Keith, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I missed the first half, and I did ask in the chat room, will there be a recording? Because I didn't get the Zoom on time, although I registered on time. Anyway, I enjoyed, and the perspectives, I have to get that book. I have many of your other books from years before I taught from your classical albums. Mm-hmm. And it was just so beautifully presented. My students like them. So basically, and I'm glad you touched on the alcohol and the keyboard. And I'm an older teacher. I am still very afraid to have students in my studio. I live on the Jersey Shore, New Jersey Shore. And some of my adult students really requested that they miss me and they want to be in person, but I just haven't had the
well, you know, don't you think, I really think too, a lot of it depends on the area you live, because of course more densely populated areas, it's a lot scarier, you know. There's just more virus and more contact with more people if there's more population. So yeah, absolutely, you know, be super careful, you know.
Thank you. Will there be a recording so I can get the entirety
Yes.
We are planning on doing that, yes.
Definitely.
I will get it from you, Carl, right?
Yes.
Again, if you're signed up for our email list, which I assume you are, since you got the original invite, then we'll send out another notification.
Thank you so much.
About the posting of the video.
Thank you for both of you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Linda wants to know if the theory and sight reading books are correlated so that students should begin. Yeah, they are correlated. Yeah. You know, you don't have to start them exactly at the same time. I don't necessarily do that, but you can have them get all the books and start them at the same time. Definitely. Yes.
Carla Van was wondering about sanitizing keys. I'm not sure if that's something that you plan to do as well when you're.
Yeah, well, I did mention that I like to use the alcohol wipes that are individually
Okay.
wrapped. That's my favorite thing to use. So.
Does anyone have any other questions? Is there anything else we can help out with? We might be winding down here and getting to a good closing point anyway. I will post the special offer one more time in case you want to take advantage of that. Again, please feel free to communicate with us directly if we didn't get to your question today. That is email@kjos.com. We're happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, I think we're at a good point here, Keith, don't you?
I do. This has been really fun. Great questions, which is the part that I've missed about, you know, going and doing the workshops in person, the interaction. But this has been really great today. So thank you, everyone, for your questions. How long will the discount be good for? Did you see that one, Carl?
Yeah, at least a week, but we may extend that towards the end of the month. So I encourage you to take advantage of it quickly, but we may extend that as well, and we may include some information about that in the posting of the video information that comes out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much to everybody. Have a wonderful day. We hope to see you again in person. And stay tuned too. We'll have some more workshops in the future, I believe. So look for those emails coming out because we hope to see you again.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.